皆さん、こんにちは。日本語教師の山口です。In this video, I'll be explaining these symbols that I use in my pronunciation practice videos. Pitch accent is a popular topic now, and many of my students already know a lot about it through YouTube before coming to my lessons. But today, I'd like to explain the basics of it my way, because I think how it's commonly taught is not necessarily the best way, and they often miss some important points. I made a quiz for you at the end of the video, so please try it out after you watch the video to check your understanding. My explanation in this video will cover only individual words. Sentence-level pitch accent will be explained in another video. Recently, another video on the same topic has been released by a popular Japanese teacher. His channel is great, and I'd recommend it for all Japanese learners. But when it comes to pitch accent, I have to disagree with him on some points. So during my explanation, I'll be referencing his video here and there when our views are different. Now I'll start with some fundamentals. The accent in Japanese is, as you most likely already know, a pitch accent, unlike English stress-based accent. There are only two groups of words, ones without an accent and ones with an accent. What we call an accent here causes a down step from the high pitch to the low pitch. For example, the phrase すみません has the down step after せ。すみません。せん。せん。There's a down step from the high pitch to the low pitch. This down step is caused by the accent placed on se. The sound that has the accent, or the sound that is accented, is what directly precedes the down step. I'll be using this symbol like a turned around L for marking the location of the accent. You can think of it as a cliff after which your voice must fall. It's not necessarily the highest point in pitch. This is very important. The notion that the accented sound is the highest point in pitch is a misunderstanding, which might result from the desire to make Japanese pitch accent look somewhat similar to English stress-based accent, so that it's more easily understandable. There can be certain cases where se is indeed the highest point. If you're calling out to a server in a restaurant, for example, it might sound like すみません. But the rising of pitch towards se is not an essential feature of the word. Fundamentally, the accented sound is just the last high-pitched sound right before the downstep. So instead of drawing a rising line towards the accented sound, for visual representation, I'll be using a binary system of one high pitch and one low pitch like this. The gap between the two pitches can be different depending on the situation. Of course, in reality, there are deviations from this strictly binary mechanical model, since human voice changes along a continuous scale. However, I still think this is a pretty good visual model on the word level, so I'll be using this in my vocabulary practice videos. Now, back to the two groups of words. As previously mentioned, what we call an accent here causes a downstep from the high pitch to the low pitch. Therefore, words without an accent are words without the downstep and pronounced mostly or entirely in a high pitch. For example, おはよう. Ohayo. I'll be using this symbol for showing that the word has no downstep. Here are some other examples. さようなら. さようなら. 日本語. 日本語. Please note that the initial low pitch only marks the beginning of the speech. It is not an essential feature of the word. Inside a longer phrase or sentence, the entire word could be pronounced with a high pitch. For example, 昔の日本語、昔の日本語. Therefore, this very commonly taught rule that the pitch always changes between the first and second sounds can be misleading and is not always true. Moreover, certain words are commonly pronounced high from the start, even without any preceding words. For example, こんにちは、こんにちは. Pronouncing the initial ko low is certainly not wrong, but こんにちは often sounds a bit unnatural, so I tend to teach my students to be careful about such words. The first two sounds here, ko and n, make up one long syllable instead of two. Because it's somewhat difficult to go up from the low pitch to the high pitch inside one syllable, such words are often, or I'd say rather normally, pronounced high from the start. This happens when the second sound is either n or a lengthened vowel. For example, 空港、空港. 中国語、中国語. 東京、東京. 動物、動物. Now, we'll move on to the words with an accent. If the accent is on the first sound, you need to start high to allow the downstep. カメラ、カメラ. After the downstep, the pitch stays low until the end of the word. 猫、猫. If the accent is not on the first sound, how you begin the word is exactly the same as the words without an accent. If the first two sounds make up one long syllable, you normally start high from the start. If not, you start with the low pitch and go immediately high. And then you keep this high pitch until the downstep. For example, すみません、すみません. Se has the accent and it causes the downstep. After the downstep, you don't necessarily have to come down to the exact same pitch where you started. The low pitch after the downstep is often lower than the initial low pitch, but it depends on the intonation. 日本人、日本人. ディズニーランド、ディズニーランド. Now, some of you might prefer this diagram, but I think it's misleading. After the initial accent, the high pitch itself could indeed go further up, depending on the intonation. If you emphasize the word in surprise, for example, it could also significantly go up, like ディズニーランド. Also, la might be pronounced extra high in some cases, like ディズニーランド. However, these are not essential features of the word. Likewise, after the downstep, the low pitch itself could indeed go further down slightly. But again, it's not an essential feature of the word. What's fundamentally important is the downstep, and in this case also the initial ascent to the high pitch, which marks the beginning of the speech. So I find this diagram misleading, which could lead to pronunciation like ディズニーランド. At least in what's considered to be standard Japanese, it's more natural to say ディズニーランド. Moving on. If the accent is at the end of the word, you hear the downstep only when something else follows the word. For example, 妹、妹は、とは、妹、妹に、とに. When there's a downstep, the difference between the low pitch and the high pitch could get a little bigger. 妹、妹は、 妹、妹は. Also, the accented sound to could be a bit emphasized with a raised pitch. 妹は. But again, these are not essential features of the word itself. So I find this misleading too. Here are some more examples of words with an accent, which start with the high pitch. 先生、先生。会社員、会社員。高等学校、高等学校。If the accent comes right away after the initial accent, it immediately goes down. ありがとう、ありがとう。日本、日本。Now you're familiar with these two symbols. This shows that the word has no downstep. And this one shows the location of the accent and the following downstep. One question remains. How do you know whether or not a specific word has an accent? And if it does, where it's located? Unfortunately, there are no all-encompassing rules that apply to every word. There are some tendencies and rules that apply to a specific group of words, which are useful and interesting to learn. But in general, it would be a good idea to practice pronunciation of each word with its specific pitch accent. Well, that's it for today, except for the quiz. I'll be making more pronunciation practice videos in the future, and I hope you like them. Thank you for watching. ご視聴ありがとうございました。Now, let's see if you can figure out how to read these words just by looking at the red symbols. おはよう、おはよう。さようなら、さようなら。日本語、日本語。こんにちは、こんにちは。空港、空港。中国語、中国語。東京、東京。動物、動物。カメラ、カメラ。猫、猫。すみません、すみません。日本人、日本人。ディズニーランド、ディズニーランド。妹は、妹は。先生、先生。会社員、会社員。高等学校、高等学校。ありがとう、ありがとう。日本、日本。 Well, that's it for the quiz. If you're still with me, I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and I'd appreciate your feedback too. Until next time. じゃあまた。